Hey.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Disney Arts Festival, series of online live events we've got going on this summer, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome Manchester poet Afshan D'souza Lodhi, welcome Afshan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. It's been great to bring somebody like you along to the Disney Arts Festival, and it's also part of, normally we'd be having an actual live festival this year, but for obvious reasons, we're not. So this is all part of us still carrying on, doing work. We have a biennial every other year, but also we do other projects through the year and engaging artists. We like to also engage people in participation work, etc. But it's really important to us, particularly in this year, that we're helping to support artists, giving them opportunities to perform, but also sharing with the audiences as well some of the work that artists have been creating but not able to share much in the last year. So welcome everybody. In the interval, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other events we've got coming up, as well as first of every month. This is the second one that we've had. So Afshan will be our first live one, because the other one was a premiere of a film. I know, it's a big time. But yes, I'll talk more about the other events when we get to the interval. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Afshan herself, who she's going to do a reading. Then we'll have a small interval, then more of a reading, and then you've got the opportunity to ask questions, find out what it is, whether you're talking about her work or just some of the things that have interested that she's spoken about today. So I shall hand you over. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Really lovely, kind introduction. So yeah, my name's Afshan D'souza Lodhi. This is really weird doing it online because I can't see anybody. I have no idea who's watching and from where. So like in the comment section, it's really nice if you can just say hello or wave or, I don't know, do a smiley face. I try and make jokes. I think I'm funny sometimes. So like if you think that I'm funny too, then like just let me know, because self-esteem in that, right? So yeah, I'm a poet, playwright, and I'm gonna do a couple of poems for you today. I like to start each of my sets in the name of my mother, the most kind, sometimes merciful, but almost always gracious. Our mothers taught us to love unconditionally. When a man breaks glass tables while showing you his nostrils, pick up the glass, cover your hands in bandages later, and make sure you don't quiver when you bring him tea. You see, darlings, we are the girls who lived, and daughters who live past their first day are wrapped in izzat and shame, and still they wonder why the girls grow up wearing guilt and marrying men who break glass tables, not glass ceilings. They make her wear red on her wedding day, so that when she bleeds, it doesn't show. Gold adorns her wrists so that when she cooks, she's reminded of the burning, but the red dress protects her lack of virginity. And the gold, she keeps that close to her heart and escape proud. So as you can probably tell, I write a lot about women. I write a lot about sexuality. And one of the things that I'm slightly obsessed with right now, as you can probably tell, is mangoes. So I love mangoes. It's like mango season. It's hot. It's amazing. And I basically got obsessed with this idea and wrote a poetic monologue type thing called How to Eat Mangoes. And it goes like this. I haven't performed this live yet, so you're a new audience. This is going to be really fun and amazing. But yeah, it's called How to Eat Mangoes. They call me a rishta auntie. An auntie meaning a woman over 25 who is not married. Rishta meaning a relationship, making me a matchmaking auntie. But really, I just teach young girls how to eat mangoes. I teach them to blow marshmallows when watching sunsets rise. I teach them to grind the ginger properly and soak it in turmeric and milk to make their skin glow and bankrupt all the hipster golden milk cafes. Take a yellow lemon, not green. Green is only good for mangoes. Squeeze the lemon into it, and then, my darling, you will dream in paisley. You who are only taught about love under palm trees and monsoons, you must learn to search for lovers using mangoes as a marker. You must learn to separate your potential husband from the chaff. He is not wheat, but if you train him enough, he may learn to knead dough. If he picks up the mango and looks for a knife, he is not to be trusted. There is a proper way to eat a mango. You might not believe it, and perhaps, my child, that is your problem, but there is. First, find a mango. There are too many varieties to name, and just like people, each one is unique, giving a slightly different flavor and taste. You've got African mangoes, larger in size, tougher skin, sweeter and more fibrous in texture, almost muscular in nature. The kind that you often find chopped up, sealed in plastic cartons in Marks and Spencer's. Pakistani mangoes, on the other hand, have a nuttier taste. Skin that rips apart upon touching it, often pulped for lassi or smoothies. Sold in bulk, smuggled across oceans in boxes for diaspora that long to connect with a homeland that refuses to acknowledge them. Then we have Indian mangoes. Similar to Pakistani mangoes, but sweeter. When you press your thumb into the skin, it will leave an indent, a mark that you were once there. They're often likened to saffron, often sold for the same price from the uncles in supermarkets who know that the diaspora can't get enough of three things: saffron, gold, mangoes. You then have some mangoes named after colonizers. But unlike the colonizers, they are rich, creamy, tender in texture and delicate. They are juicy in a way that the colonizer is not and can never be. Choose your mangoes carefully. Make sure they are ripe enough to be molded by your hands, but not so ripe that the very Western countries that once colonized you impose importing bans. Hold your mango in one hand and then watch him, your potential lover. Look at how he picks up a mango. He has never known the touch of a lover, and you can tell. The way he squeezes the fruit to check its ripeness, his fingers have not yet experienced tenderness, nor has his body. He was taught not to love, but to fuck. As boys are taught to grab and pull and girls are taught to take it, mangoes don't need to be treated as such. Gently roll it in your hands between your finger and thumb and press on the flesh. Break down the inner structure until it feels like the bosom of the lover that taught you intimacy. Then, once you are satisfied, ask permission before covering the tip with your mouth. Rip the top off with your teeth, or if you're more sophisticated than that, use your fingers. Release the heat within and let the juices ooze for a moment. See how long it takes for you to let it drip down your arm before you have the urge to lick it clean. You must learn to be comfortable with messiness. Mango etiquette requires it. Then, you suck. The experts will know exactly when and how much to squeeze in order to have the right amount squirt into your mouth. The amateurs may use a plate to catch the mango that drips. Wasting a mango is a sin. Once sucked, dry, peel open the skin. Use your fingers to pry the stone out. See the flesh that clings onto the hairs of the stone. That's the best bit. Don't forget the skin. There is still mango there too. Once finished, look down at the mess that you have created. The mango that was once supple and full is now a carcass of skin and stole, and that, my child, is how you find a lover. The only people worth spreading your legs for are the ones who bite off the end and suck the insides. Only the ones who know how to chew on the stone should be let into your bed. While men may lie, mangoes do not. Let the peel pattern of the skin dictate to you his position. I made the mistake of marrying one who carried a knife for such occasions. I mistook his preparation for thrill. Instead, I spent nights falsely calling for God and shaking my body while the earth stayed flat. His body stayed flat, my mind flat. He was good with his words, but his tongue, not so much. Switch up your cut up pre-packaged mangoes for fresh whole ones. Maybe then, my child, you will stop loving in English, distant vanilla love. Maybe then you will dream of sequins on velvet. Maybe, just maybe, you'll find a lover worth loving. Until then, you'll have the mangoes to keep you company. Go on, find a mango. So that was a monologue called How to Eat Mangoes, which is part of a longer kind of play that I'm working on, which is how to find a lover using a mango. I should have warned you that it's quite erotic. So if there are people under the age of 16 or 18, I hope you got permission from your parents to listen. I will read one more poem and then I think we'll have a short break. So the poem that I'm going to read is it's for all of you to listen to, but I essentially wrote it for the people that are stuck between two generations. So first generation migrants are called first generation because they weren't born here and they arrived here as children or as adults. Second generation are people whose parents were born here, whose parents came over, but they were born here in this country. And then there are those of us that sort of fit in the middle of that, which is like 1.5 generation. And that's where I stick in. So I kind of fit into this weird kind of like sphere of coming to this country before I was 7 years old. So I've had all of my schooling and education, but I still don't belong here. So this is for anybody that identifies as 1.5 generation. If you identify that way, then do let me know in the comments. Like I said, it's really lovely to see the people. I love all these mango emojis coming through. It's really given me life. I love all the smiles. So thank you to everyone sharing your opinions. So yeah, this piece is called 1.5 generation, and it goes like this. 1.1. Last night I cried. My father came home and told me an uncle had shouted at him for letting his daughter wear dresses. I cried not because of the inherent sexism or the male gaze that will never let up in our community, but because when I imagined having a conversation with this uncle in Urdu, I couldn't. I got halfway through telling him what respect really meant when I forgot the word for gaze, and I couldn't come up with the equivalent in Hindi or Urdu, and my mother tongue, it bit itself. See, I'm able to engage and interrogate certain ideas in English, but basic words and emotions are still stuck in my mother tongue. I cried because even in my fantasies, I couldn't win an argument against one of my sexist uncles. 1.2. It has been too long since I stood side by side with my mother in the kitchen to cook, writing down recipes to dishes so I remember them when I'm older. She switches them up when she tells them to me, adds extra tomatoes and yogurt and halves the spices. She knows something that I don't. The more years I spend apart from her, the less spice my tongue will be able to hold. As desi words no longer fill my mouth, so will desi tastes vanish from my palate. I plate my food now with extra spice as an attempt to try and get used to the feeling of mirch and pain on my tongue, a feeling that will grow to become more familiar as I move closer and closer to 1.3. My body is familiar with the beats, the tabla, but my ears, they can no longer take the high-pitched tones of the singers. The sur stops at me. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa came before do, re, mi, but I only know the rags that feature in the top 10. I've listened to remixes of remixes until all I could hear are the vale babu mera gana chalado. But I still rejoice when Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's Janiya sends shivers down my spine. I start the song again, my lips opening as if Nusrat's voice is my own, but still, even with his voice guiding mine, I miss the beat and start the next line too early. My body moves half a beat off the tabla, and I pretend that I'm listening in double time. Double time. 1.4 women do not fit into saris. Saris are made for whole women, 1.0 women. For those of us that are 1.4 women, the yards don't stretch enough to make the right amount of pleats to fall and grace our curves when we walk. The gap between our blouses and our skirts is bigger than the space between the ground and our falls, but not bigger than the rift between our histories and us. 1.4 of us won't remember to bin the pallu before we count the pleats. We will fold a threaded sari in on itself and buy sari-inspired jackets with labels that cost us more than a flight ticket back home. I buy my bangles from Amazon because I'm too ashamed to walk into a high street shop, ask the uncle for churia, and pronounce it wrong. My wrists may have been made for the constant clanging of glass against glass, but smashing the patriarchy makes me bleed. I bleed sindoor, familiar, and I recognize that not from my relatives, but from watching daily dramas on ZTV and Sony. As a pseudo shock from the cliffhanger ending hits me, my sari threatens to undo itself and expose my pale skin, 1.5 generation immigrant. I'm not wholly second generation, assimilated, somewhat accepted into a community. I am too young when you came here to be first generation, but still foreign enough to have a home to go back to. I'm not enough. 0.5 of me is in another country constantly. 0.5 of me is struggling to turn my tongue in ways I used to. 0.5 of me cries at the thought of my children not being able to hold private conversations in public. 0.5 of me orders lemon and herb instead of extra hot. 0.5 of me cannot hold a dupatta straight. 0.5 of me forgets if the song was an original or a remix. 0.5 of me will forget what channel Kyuki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahoti came on. 0.5 of me, 0.5 of me, 0.5 of me, 0.5 of me, 0.5 of me turns to the whole of me and questions her identity. 1.5 of me sits on the borders and laughs back. 1 foot in each country, weight distributed so not to weigh anyone down. I take your spices and mother tongue and sequins and rags, and I raise you as a proud immigrant. Thank you. Oh, Lucy, you're on mute. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Thank you very much, Afshan. That's beautiful. Really lovely. We're getting some lovely comments back in as well. I'm going to let you just have a minute's pause, and I'll just talk a little bit in terms of what we've got coming up. Next month, a poet again, Mike Gary. Now, this is actually somebody, I know, Afshan, that you had come to your school when you were younger and found inspiring in that way. But it's lovely to kind of have a mix of different art forms that are happening over the summer. So next month on the 1st of July, we have at 7 p.m. poet Mike Gary. When we go to August, on the 1st of August, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it's the weekend, we have a comic art based on the Marvel comics, which is basically looking at the different collections, the highlights, the original Marvel comics, the designs, the artists that worked in them, and then 70s, 80s, and 90s, which gave rise from forgettable characters like Black Panther, Storm, Jessica Jones. So that's the 1st of August. On the 1st of September, we have electronic musician Vicky Clark. 7 p.m. one that will be. You can find all of this on our website as well. Just go to disbyartsfestival.org. So for this 1st of September, we've got musician Vicky Clark, Manchester-based, great electronic media artist, performs all over the world. She's got fantastically talented and doing a residency actually at the moment at Northern College of Music, Royal Northern College of Music. So it'd be great to go into her studio and see her perform as well. And that'll be the last in our current series. But at the moment as well, I want to give a chance to, and Afshan's got more to perform for us. Just want to have a look at some of the comments that are coming in. Some good comments about how you're reading, that people are enjoying. Smiley faces, mangoes, as you said.
I love all the mango love. It's
I know.
Inspiring. It's amazing.
You were saying to me earlier, this is the first time you've been able to perform this year online as well.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It really is.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
It's been a really difficult year for artists, so it's great to have you put as part of this program of work. So as I said, everybody, I'm going to hand you back to Afshan now so she can do her next performance, and then there's a chance for you to ask questions as well. Ask those things, ask away, whatever you want to know.
Thanks, Lucy. So yeah, it has been a really weird year for artists, and case in point is that I published this last year, almost a year ago now. My debut poetry collection, Ari Desire, it was longlisted. Sorry, it was longlisted for the Chaluk Prize. That's insane. Absolutely insane. This is the collection, Ari Desire. If you notice, I have the DESI. Oh, there we go, in italics, because it's desi, which means South Asian. I know I'm a poet. Can you tell? I really like words. But this is what I've been reading from today, bits and pieces from here. You can buy it from our website. You can buy it from the publisher. Please don't buy it from Amazon. If you really have to, then do, but don't buy it from your independent booksellers or from the publisher, Burning Eye Books, who are amazing and fabulous. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to read actually from this collection, which has just come out, Not Quite Right for Us, by Speaking Volumes, which is a live literature production company. And this is essentially, I think it's 40 writers that have written essays about not fitting in to different spaces. And when the team got in touch with me and said, we'd love for you to write something, I was like, oh, there's been a lot of spaces and a lot of times I felt a bit like I've not fit in. But what is the one thing that I want to write about? And this one instance came to me, and I'll just read it to you. I'll read you some of it. Hi, Mum. If you're watching this, then I haven't told you about this first part, but I guess it's the confession. So here we go. This year is the second time in my life that I'm sporting an undercut. It's under here. You guys can't see it because it's grown out now, thankfully. A type of hairstyle that features shaving a large portion of your head. Because the shaved part of your head is usually the underlayer underneath the nape of your neck or to one side, it's pretty easy to hide with long hair. And that's exactly what I've done, hidden it. From my mum, from the nosy aunties who stalk my Instagram, and the uncles who hang about the meat shop. It's really too silly to think that I meticulously shaved, or rather strong-armed my friend into meticulously shaving the underside of my head, only for me to spend most of the time with my hair down, hiding the shaved part. I just know that in Manchester, even in 2020, we desis haven't reached a point where we can sport a shaved or even partially shaved hairstyle. I wasn't always like this wannabe rocker. There was a moment that I could have been identified as an uncool freshie. I was 13 years old when my dad gave me an MP3 player. He told me that it was like an iPod, but better. This one had speakers attached to it so that when you took the headphones out, you could blast your music loud for everyone to hear who needed headphone splitters. Now, here I could go into detail about a certain incident, but honestly, it makes me nauseous. But all I'll say is that it involved my high school crush, a public bus, some cringe Bollywood music, and not an iPod MP3 player. That was the last time I used it. And it was also the first time that I used LimeWire to download the most recent edition of Now That's What I Call Music. Never again would I be caught listening to high-pitched tones over tabla beats in public. I wasn't old enough or politically aware enough to understand the term assimilation, but in hindsight, that's what I did. I did not want to be singled out for being different. I was already one of the only two hijabis, a girl who wears headscarf, in my school, and the other one was much, much cooler than me. I remember the first time I listened to rock music. My friend Charlotte burnt me a mixtape on CDs called Songs to Get Angry To, featuring rock and some heavy metal. This is how I was introduced to Nirvana, Linkin Park, Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, Blink-182, Papa Roach, and Blue October. From there, it was a short jump to Five Finger Death Punch and Rammstein. This music made me angry, made me want to scream, but in a cathartic way. I felt safe and protected while listening to it. Eventually, my ringtones would be replaced with heavy guitar strumming, and I'd wake up to I Choose Death Before Dishonor and start my day. I used to wonder if people could hear the screaming through my headphones. Luckily for me, my hijab style back then consisted of wrapping thick material around and round my head pretty tightly, creating a soundproofing effect. I don't think I ever thought too deeply about the lyrics. I just really liked how I could zone out to the music, to the noise. This is a complete contrast to the Bollywood music I'd grown up listening to. Pretty soon, my wardrobe began to change too. Leather jackets, new rocks on my feet. I even invested in some chains for my hijab. I was determined to look the part and fit in. The first concert I went to was Rammstein. I got all kitted out in my faux leather skirt, some ripped tights and a choker. And I turned up with my friend to the O2. And it was only then when we were walking up the stairs to our seats that I realized that everyone around me was white. The whole venue was full of industrial metal fans, and I struggled to find one person of color. A few months later, I went to see Marilyn Manson, and exactly the same thing happened. A full arena and not one person of color in sight. As we left the concert, someone spilled a glass of beer on me. It was probably an accident, but that small act suddenly made the space unsafe. I didn't want to go back into a mosh pit after that. Something didn't quite feel right. I started questioning the politics and the race of the musicians. Suddenly, I became hyper-aware of the alt-right and neo-Nazis and their chosen anthems, or metal. My love for music eventually died down, yet the aesthetic stayed. I tried hard to find punk and rock bands that had people of color in them, particularly desis, but it seemed like punk wasn't something that South Asians did. And then I came across the Kaminas. The Kaminas did for me what those first CDs from Charlotte had done. They provided me with a safe space to be desi and Muslim and punk, and to be able to swear and scream and headbang. The Kaminas allowed me back into the punk and rock spheres without feeling like I was sympathizing with the alt-right. The only problem was that they're based in the United States. I couldn't find a community here in Manchester. I moved back in with my parents, hi mum, and had to turn down my rock chick look massively. None of my desi friends were into it. They didn't really get why I wanted to shave my head or, understand the appeal of a scaffold piercing. My ripped denim jackets were replaced with kurtas, my leather chains and cuffs with gold bangles. In the mainstream, we started seeing desi influencers and models, sari-inspired clothing and bindis made their way into hipster clubs and festivals and into fashion weeks. I didn't have time to mourn the loss of leather. I had a new obsession. My mother was happier seeing me in culturally appropriate clothing. I quickly got bored of the femme look, though, and tried to switch it up, wearing short kurtas with jeans and a bag of shalwar with normal t-shirts. It didn't go down too well. For some reason, when white girls did it, it was fashion. But when I did it, I looked like I'd forgotten half the outfit at home. I didn't understand how yoga pants and casually worn bindis had become a fashion statement for others, but gave me high school freshie flashbacks when I wore them. I yearned for the time that I could just wear leather skirts and chokers and instantly feel part of the community. I almost missed listening to metal. I fell in and out of love with people who introduced me to other genres of music, but I could never quite recreate the feeling that I got when I listened to metal. I had a brief moment of listening to Bhangra and then to Afrobeat, but found that I was always looking for heavy beats and something to zone out to. I started going to Muslim matchmaking events, but ultimately had to make a choice. I could either embrace my half punk, half desi self and try and explain all of the ways in the space of 2 minutes, or I could drop one of them. It was always easier to drop one. I knew the cultured and desi version of myself would be more accepted in those spaces, so I put the leather jacket back in the closet. The matchmaking never amounted to anything. The events were great for anecdotes to tell at parties, but nothing else. Even with my cultured desi self, it was still not right for those events or spaces. I just didn't fit in. It's a shame it took me a while to work that one out. A few months ago, I found a suitcase containing my old leather skirts, corsets, and ripped tights. I tried on my leather jacket and found that it didn't fit. I'd outgrown it. Perhaps because of the lockdown, or perhaps it was knowing that the aunties will always side-eye me, I ordered a new jacket and a pair of chunky Doc Martens and called my friend to shave my head. As a teen, I used to dream of starting my own desi punk band. Maybe I'll call it the Real Freshies. Maybe I'll bump into a few desis who love headbanging and wearing baggy shalwars just as much as I do, and maybe we'll start a band together. In the meantime, I'll keep listening to the Communals on repeat and hiding my undercut from my mum. Just to say that there is a new show called We Are Lady Parts that is amazing because they're all Muslim women that are in a punk band and they are really, really cool and I love them. I wish that I was in it, in the band, that is. But yeah, so this is from the collection Not Quite Right for Us. There are 39 other amazing, fabulous writers in here. Jay Bernard is in here, guys. Jay Bernard is fabulous. So please do have a look at that. I'm going to read a couple more poems for you, if that's okay. If you've got any questions, do pop them into the chat as well. It's always nice to hear from people and see what is resonating and what isn't. This poem is it's a difficult poem that I wrote for. I'm just going to read it. This is for the ones who carry rainbow flags, tied onto the bags or the hooks of their jeans, like heavy metal fans wear chains. The ones who saw that the rainbow only had 6 stripes and added a 7th and an 8th. Ones who reclaim religions that are deemed homophobic and take ownership of their sexuality in front of their gods. Ones who come out every day and stand up to hate from all sides of the argument. At home, at church, in mosques, in schools, on the front line of a pride parade, arguing and justifying your reason for being there. What reason could you possibly have after all these years of attacks and assaults to claim a religion that seemingly hates who you are? Making our faith ours has been a journey and a half, and we're still not there yet. All I know is that if we don't own it, then we're broadcasting a message of fear. And we've lived in fear most of our lives. Fear when we see a group of white boys throwing fireworks into the middle of the street and wondering if the next one will be aimed at our face. Fear of walking into a club and getting rejected. Fear of being chucked out of a club after an attack. Fear of going to hell for dancing on the devil in the club. Fear of pulse. I'm done being scared. The rainbow does not offend. Pick up the red and breathe a moment's silence. Remember those lost. Collect the orange and welcome those found. Keep the yellow close to your heart. Take blue and love always. Find a violet in grey skies. Create a flag with the 7th and 8th colours, the black and brown, solidarity with all, and wrap it around your siblings. Form a cocoon around them. Protect them until they are ready to be released into the world as butterflies. Somewhere over that rainbow, we'll find families that understand that human beings are complex, that you can be queer and Muslim, that you can exist. Until then, we will wear it in our hair, tie it onto our bags, or on the hooks of our jeans like heavy metal fans wear change. Between each pulse, we will wear every rainbow with pride. I thought, given that it's the 1st of June and it's the beginning of Pride Month, of Gay Month, of rainbows everywhere, we'll ignore the commercialization of it all, that it would be a nice poem to bring in. It was a piece that I wrote for an album that is coming out pretty soon. More details to follow on that. But yeah, sorry, I forget how much that takes out of me, that piece. Cool. Okay, some more poems. We've got an option. We've got we've got a choice. So if you're still watching, and I can see a couple of eyes on here, let me know which one would you prefer. I've got anonymous was a woman, or we can have she is not an arsonist. Oh, hold on. I'm fascinated by titles. How does your title, Are You Desire, reflect on the poems inside? Oh, amazing. So the desi is about being South Asian, and the desire is about falling in love and being in love. And for me, I like the idea of playing with words and the repetition of Ari here and Ari there, the re and re. It's like you're learning to re-desire yourself. So it's not just about regarding desire. This collection is about how do you learn to desire as a person, as a woman of color, as a queer woman. What is a process that you have to go through when society tells you that you're not desirable, that you don't know how to desire, that you don't deserve love. So that's where a lot of my poems, I think, fit into it. I don't know. Guys, you should read it and let me know if it does what it says on the tin. See what I did there? Made you go and buy the book. I'm going to read She's Not an Arsonist, because we're in lockdown and we're all burnt out, and we're all exhausted, man. So solidarity for all of you for showing up. Really, I appreciate it. This is called She Is Not an Arsonist, and it goes like this. She is not an arsonist. Every day she burns her own skin to walk out of the door and face the world. Their mothers taught the embers in her eyes where the sun reflected. They soon saw their own sons reflected. They burned her, not in food with spices or being lovesick over dead husbands. They burned her like factories making ugly jumpers burn. By accident, by making young boys throw lit alcohol bottles into her, by speaking their own truths for her, by disposing cigarettes on her by mistake. They burnt her by mistake, told her her plain features were now cured by ugliness, used rebirth to justify their fire. Her skin grew back thicker with a character of its own. She grew scars over scars in a way that amateur DIYers paste wallpaper over wallpaper. But the keloid became her armor. Now, all fair and lovely, she burns her skin before she leaves the house. It is the only way she knows how to face the world. She's not an arsonist. She can't be an arsonist. The only thing that she burns out is herself. So that's just to say to take a break, guys, from your screens, from life, from work. Have a nap, go sit in the sun, do something fun. And just because I think my mom is watching, hi mom, I'm gonna finish my set with a poem for my mom. As this is for people that speak more than one language. Most of you probably heard it. If you've heard it, then I don't know, sing along with me. It's called Mother Tongue, and it goes like this. My mother's mother tongue is Konkani, but she speaks my father's language at home. We have to, because having multilingual arguments in the house would confuse MI5, and well, we're just too kind for that. So instead we speak Urdu, the language of love, the language of poets, but all my mother ever hears are the butchered slang words young boys sling at each other on the bus. My mother's mother tongue is Konkani, but outside the house, she uses English. God forbid anyone thinks she's a freshie. She's learned to not roll her R's and use only sparingly, but still she gets asked, darling, where are you really from? She hears cheap imitations of a voice she's tried so hard to shake on TV and film, and it reminds her of what she sounds like to the rest of them. My mother's mother tongue is Konkani, but sometimes she speaks Hindi, like when we're out shopping and talking about the guy who just Q-jumped in front of us. She smiles when she speaks it, head up and proud, brings her closer to home. But then she has to revert back to the language of the colonizer to finish the tale, and suddenly her head lowers. My mother's mother tongue is Konkani, but the only time she ever speaks it is to her mother on Sunday mornings. I watch her struggle. Sometimes she tries to remember the word for fruit and replaces it with English or Urdu. She blames it on her growing age, but I know that she's forgotten. Mujhe maich bas Konkani, and so should mine be. I dread the day that my grandmother passes, for I'm afraid my mother will lose her tongue. She won't speak with proudness or chat back with slickness. On my mother's tongue, it will feel foreign in her mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Afi. Afshan, that was absolutely lovely. I'm really enjoying you reading live. It's a real treat for us as well. The collection that the works are from, I've read some of those, and as you said, J. Bernard, brilliant poet as well. I'm going to start inviting people to ask some questions now. So if we could, I'll start kicking off. There's Lady Parts. I watched it. I absolutely loved it.
Amazing.
Where has this kind of comedy been? It was, it was fantastic. I've only seen the first one. I'd very much like to kind of keep reading as well, keep watching rather, in terms of, you've got me into reading and poetry now. But let's just take a question from Kerry, actually, before I go into. Do you find it easy to switch between different types of writing that you do? And Kerry, son?
Sometimes. I guess there's particular ideas that will come to me in a form, in a particular thing. And there's certain ideas that I get obsessed with, like mangoes, for example, and they'll just find their way into other stuff I'm writing. So it might be that I'm writing. So I'm usually writing multiple things at the same time. So at the moment, I'm writing a play, a TV, something, a couple of short stories, and then there's always poems that come out. So there'll always be a point where I'm like, oh, this idea is for this thing over here, and I feel like I'm wasting it because I can just park it in that like other folder, that other Word document on my computer. But no, stylistically, I don't find it as difficult, actually. I think I can switch between them. I think I can switch between them. I don't know. I hope I can. I hope it makes sense when I do them. But there's elements that will obviously weave into all of them.
Who do you find inspiring in terms of the people you're seeing out there? They may not particularly be inspiring your work so directly, but you find them at the moment, who are the people you're paying attention to a little bit, or who've influenced you in the past as well?
So a lot of my contemporaries. I mean, I am really thankful in that the communities in Manchester that I grew up in as a poet, rather than growing up as a child, have been really full of like phenomenal poets. And you mentioned Mike Garry earlier, but Mike Garry's actually influenced a lot of my poetry in terms of writing openly but not openly about sexuality and sex. And I remember one of the first poems that I heard of his, he was I can't remember what it was, about riding a bicycle, and there was a bush and there was like berries, and essentially it was a euphemism for these two people having sex. And I remember kind of going, oh my God, you can do that in poetry. It doesn't have to be Seamus Heaney all the time. It can be dirty, it can be messy. So for me, like Mike Garry is definitely an influence. Like J. Bernard, I mentioned them. Jay is a phenomenal poet. If you've not read their collection Surge, I think you really should go and find it. But in Manchester, for example, there's Adam Lowe, there's Cheryl Martin, there's Shirley May, there's a lot of the Young Identity lot and the crew that have been shaping Manchester's poetry scene for a long, long time. And for me, that's what inspires me. We mentioned Lady Parts, We Are Lady Parts earlier, and I watched the short maybe last year, a couple of years ago, when it came out on, I think it was like 15-minute episode that they've done, the pilot.
Yeah.
And I was like really excited by it, and I was like, oh, they're not going to do anything. This is really sad. And then it's come out, and I am like angry because like I wanted to write that and be in it and like do it. Like there's so much jealousy, but in a really nice, good way. And like I just want to hug Nidam Manzoor and be like, yes, well done. But that's inspiring because it's like I can do this. I can write the stuff I'm writing about. And I don't have to do as much of the hard lifting of fighting for representation because there's other people ahead of me that are doing it. So I feel like inspiration for me comes from all spaces and everywhere. And mangoes, obviously.
I love the mango boxes in the back.
Actually.
That's staging, darling, staging. We've got another question from Rav Shaw. Have you written any poems that switch back and forth between mother tongue and English? I can see this dual culture is important to you.
So I used to, really interestingly, I used to write poetry in Urdu, really bad Urdu. So Urdu is my father's mother tongue. That's a really odd thing to say, isn't it? My father's mother tongue. But we spoke it growing up, and we kind of knew it, and I started writing poetry in it. And I experimented writing in Urdu and in English at the same time. But English has this really weird thing that it makes everything vanilla. and you know, I made reference to it in one of my pieces, but it genuinely does. I feel like when I translate stuff from Urdu into English, I lose all of it. All the poetry just goes. It's just suddenly like I can be saying something in Urdu and it's like, oh my God, it's like phenomenal. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And then as soon as you translate it, it's like her eyes were blue like the sky. And you're like, oh, that's it's not really like exciting, is it? It's just a thing. And it's really sad when that happens. Some of my monologues, some of my plays actually, there's a lot more of the experimentation between switching back between English and Hindi and Urdu and Konkani, just because you have the ability as a performer anyway, I have the ability to be able to use my body in a way to explain the words without explaining them. And in poetry, I do it with odd words. So I don't switch back in there. It's often like the odd words. So I'll use mashallah, or, you know, I'll make reference to roop, you know, which translates to face. And I'll play around with names of people. Because in Hindi, when you translate a name of a person into, a name of a person is a meaning as well. So it doubles up. So the name Kiran, for example, can also mean light. So you can use it in that way and play around with poetry more so than you can in English.
Yeah. And as somebody obviously interested in poetry, where would you go in Manchester if you were in normal times? Obviously, where the sort of places you go to hear, listen to, meet other poets?
All of the festivals. Manchester is like amazing because we have this DIY culture. So we don't wait around for the institutions to give us stuff. We just go and do it. So Didsbury Arts Festival, Manchester Lit Festival, you know, MIF as well, that happens. Anything at Central Library, most of the events that they do are free. And it's really nice to just be able to walk into a space and kind of see stuff happen. Yeah. You know, October is a manic month because there are like a gazillion events that happen. Not just because it's Black History Month, but also because it's poetry. It feels like it's poetry month. Everything writing wise happens in October. All the festivals happen then. So it's really lovely to see the range of activity that's happening around then. You know, as a new poet, Common Word Culture Word Writer Development Organization based, you know, in central Manchester, they've definitely had a hand in networking me or helping me network with other writers and other poets. And, you know, they run the longest running writer workshop for BME writers in the UK, which has been running, you know, I think since like the 80s on a Wednesday evening. They run Monday Night Group, which is another really long running writers group that runs every Monday evening. And I just think that they're so interlinked with every poet that I know has like interacted with or been through or performed at or attended a workshop at Common Word. So like that's where I met all of my writers. That's where I networked with them. Yeah,
having that kind of consistent support or place to go, isn't it, in terms of artists? And you find that often the places, whether they be small towns or cities, the ones that have actually supported an ongoing place for artists, whether it be a dance house or poetry performance spaces, are just somewhere where people can gather together and not be so much in isolation.
Well, Manchester is like, you've got to remember that we've got 3 universities and the chancellor at each of those universities is a poet. You've got Jackie Kay, you've got Lem Sisse, and then you've got, oh my God, her name has slipped my mind. She was the poet laureate.
Caroline. Yeah.
3 poets that are like, you know, the head of universities that are running stuff. That's amazing. Which other university does that? I don't think anybody does. Manchester does that. Manchester's given you those poets. You know, all those poets have come through here or lived here or worked in here. And that's just a testament to Manchester being like a city of poetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's also as well, you know, we're aware that, you know, these are poets as well that are very accessible in many ways as well, you know, and when you're working in and with festivals and programming things, there's such a rich offer of artists. It used to be that, oh gosh, you know, if you want to get a career in the arts, you've got to go to London. And it's like, no, you know, it really doesn't feel like that anymore. And as an artist who's developing and established, and do you feel that this is a city you can very much be at home in? It's not somewhere you've got to move away to kind of make that kind of success in other ways.
When I first came, I had that feeling. I had the feeling that the opposite, sorry, that I had to be in London or had to be in another like happening city. Manchester was too slow. So I did my undergrad in London and I sort of, you know, became an adult in London, really, from like 18 to 22. So when I came back to Manchester, I was like, everything's slow. My parents are here and my siblings are here, and I have to take the bus to go into town, and this is long, you know. And it was like, oh God, what? And you know, thankfully, I've shifted from that. From that. And I think part of it is about networks. Part of it is about finding your writing family. You know, it's about knowing that there are so many people and places in Manchester that I can connect to that I wouldn't be able to in London, because there's just too much in London, to the point that you know, when I go now, I can only go for short bursts of time because it's too much. I have to separate myself from it. So I'm finding that there's a beauty in what I assumed was a slowness of Manchester. It's that everybody's out working and collaborating with each other. Whereas in London, everybody seems to be out for themselves and wanting to, you know, waiting for the institutions to give them something.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's the sort of collaboration you get between the art forms, different artists, and between, you know, in other cities, certainly in London, there's a very competitiveness about that.
Sure.
Well, here, I think as well, you know, you can see it within the way in which we organise culture as well, where it comes from city, you know, and other councillors, etc. The willingness to have culture as part of what a city is. It's not perfect by any means, but it's certainly, you know, it feels like it's got its own strength, definitely, and then it's very proud of that. And hopefully something where, you know, every artist can feel part of that as well.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, you know, considering the amount of funding that London gets over Manchester, we've done really well. Really well in Manchester.
That's very true. Yes, there is a little bit of an imbalance going on there. But we're not going to go into that. We're not doing that. Not tonight. Well, thank you so much, Afshan. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm sure we've had really positive comments as well. It's been great to have you on as our first live online performer as well.
I'm on it.
Thank you very much. I have a confession as well. You did actually help me with all the tech behind this as well at a certain level. So thank you very much for introducing me to a new platforms and stuff like that, so that simultaneously stream. Thanks for that. As I said, we had on our YouTube channel and also on our website, we've still got details of Clay Eastgate. They had a film they created last month for us. It's still available to watch. It's still there. It's fabulous. So they did a series of painting the poets portraits, which are absolutely beautiful. So following the theme of poets seems to run quite strongly through this. Do have a look at that film, everybody. It's great. Each month, every month, we've got a different artist on the first of the month through July, August and September, the next three. In July, Mike Gary. In August, we've got the collector Marvel Comics, Stephen Jocelyn, and in September, the electronic sound artist, Vicky Clark, all of them connecting into Manchester. So please do come along and beam in, as it were, next time. Do join in, and if you've got anything you want to feedback on us, do let us know. It's really great to have you all attend and be part of this. And my big thanks, first and foremostly, to Afshan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And you've been an amazing audience. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And good night.
Bye.